The number you're about to hear has never been recorded in human history. 3 days ago, a signal appeared in the American Meteor Society's orbital data that shouldn't exist. 2 separate research teams measured it. They submitted their papers this month. They still cannot agree on what it means. All they know is that right now, something is raining down on North America at an unprecedented rate, and the objects surviving the atmosphere are getting larger. Hold that thought. This isn't a theory. On March 17th, a 7-ton space rock detonated over Ohio. 4 days later, a piece of a completely different meteor crashed through the roof of a family home in Houston, Texas. These 2 facts cannot both be normal simultaneously. They represent a statistical impossibility that planetary defense agencies are currently scrambling to explain. NASA says this is just fireball season. But the raw data from the Center for Near-Earth Object Studies tells a much darker story. If you stay with me through this, you'll understand exactly why the public statements from our top space agencies directly contradict the numbers quietly being published in their own databases. But here's where it gets strange. I'm going to break this down so it actually makes sense. Hit subscribe if you want the truth backed by hard data. Because the window to understand what's forming over our heads is closing fast. Let's look at the timeline. March 2026. March 3rd, a massive fireball triggers a sonic boom over Vancouver. March 8th and 11th, Western Europe is lit up by daylight bolides. Then, March 17th, a 6-foot-wide, 7-ton meteor strikes the atmosphere over Ohio at 39,000 miles per hour. Now add this to everything I just told you. The pressure wave was so violent, it rattled windows across 12 different states. NASA quickly published a blog post. They called it a spectacular sky show. They reminded us that meteors are common, but they didn't mention that the American Meteor Society had just logged 2,322 fireball events in the first quarter of 2026, the highest number ever recorded. Then came March 21st. A fireball tears across the Texas sky at 35,000 miles per hour. It detonates. A cannonball-sized fragment survives the extreme heat, plummets toward the ground, and rips straight through the roof of a house in Cypress Station, just north of Houston. Space just reached down and touched a suburban bedroom. Stay with this, because it matters more than the first result. 2 days later, California. Over 200 witnesses report a blazing object over Chowchilla. Then Michigan. Then Georgia. The map of the United States looked like a targeting grid. The AMS data showed that events with 50 or more witnesses had doubled compared to the historical average. 40 massive events compared to a baseline of 20. But witnesses can be mistaken. Cameras can be fooled. You know what can't be faked? Sonic booms. 82.5% of these large events produced concussive sonic booms. That is one massive atmosphere-shattering explosion every 3 days. Put that in historical context. We haven't seen an atmospheric bombardment density like this since the historical anomalies of the early 20th century. But back then, we didn't have the sensor network we have now. Let's dive into the statistics, because the math does not lie. The AMS performed a Poisson distribution analysis on the Q1 2026 data. The results showed a 3.1 to 3.9 sigma deviation from the baseline. In statistics, a 3 sigma event is a highly unusual anomaly. Approaching 4 sigma means you are looking at a fundamental shift in the physical environment. And that's not even the part that concerns scientists. Look at the witness density. The average witness count for a large fireball in March was 142.7. The previous record was 49.4, set back in 2021. That is a nearly 300% increase. Long-duration sightings, meteors surviving for more than 4 seconds in the atmosphere, hit 1,693 reports. The previous high was 651. Skeptics immediately pointed to AI. They argued that people are just using ChatGPT and Siri more, which directs them to the AMS website to file reports. It's a comfortable explanation. It makes everyone feel safe. But AI reporting algorithms cannot generate a sonic boom. An algorithm cannot drop a eucrite meteorite onto a house in Texas. The signal gets stronger at the higher thresholds. This is the absolute hallmark of a genuine physical change in the incoming material. Hold that thought, because the origin of these rocks is terrifying. The data revealed 14 events originating from what astronomers call the Anthelion source. Historically, we see 1 to 6 events from this region. High-declination radiance, meteors coming in at steep, unusual angles, produced 12 events. The maximum we've ever seen is 5, and here is the smoking gun. 2 of the meteorites recovered within 9 days of each other, one in Ohio, one in Germany, were rare HED meteorites, specifically eucrites. We know exactly where eucrites come from. They are pieces of the crust of asteroid Vesta. Think about what that means. Pieces of a giant asteroid located hundreds of millions of miles away are suddenly intersecting with Earth's orbit at an accelerated rate. To understand why this is a crisis, you have to understand the inner solar system's debris field. It is not empty space. It is a chaotic, swirling highway of ancient shrapnel. Asteroid Vesta is the second largest object in the asteroid belt. Eons ago, it suffered massive collisions, ejecting millions of fragments into space. But here is the critical detail. Those fragments don't just wander randomly, they fall into orbital resonances. Jupiter's massive gravitational field acts like a cosmic metronome, nudging and pushing these debris streams. Over decades, particles drift sunward. This is the Anthelion source. It's a steady trickle of dust and pebbles. But the high-declination radiance, those are coming from completely outside the ecliptic plane. They are dropping in from above. This implies that a larger, unmapped debris stream has been perturbed. Something disrupted a cluster of Vesta fragments, and Earth is currently flying blindly through the crosshairs. This is why the scientists are arguing. The data proves the debris is here, but the orbital models failed to predict it. We've seen what happens when planets intersect with unmapped debris. In 1994, comet Shoemaker-Levy 9 slammed into Jupiter, leaving impact scars the size of Earth. In 1908, a mere 50-meter rock detonated over Tunguska, flattening 80 million trees across 800 square miles. And that brings us to preparedness and personal safety. The objects we are seeing now in 2026 are small, 7 tons, 6 feet across. But in planetary terms, the difference between a 6-foot rock and a 160-foot city killer is a microscopic rounding error. NASA's Planetary Defense Network is a modern marvel, but it has a strictly defined mandate. Track objects 140 meters and larger. Why? Because a 140-meter asteroid carries an impact energy of roughly 50 megatons. It would wipe out a small country. But this threshold creates a terrifying blind spot. Listen to these numbers very carefully. In 2013, an asteroid entered the atmosphere over Chelyabinsk, Russia. It was only 20 meters wide. NASA never saw it coming. It approached from the direction of the sun. It detonated with 500 kilotons of energy, more than 30 times the yield of the Hiroshima bomb. 1,600 people were injured. 7,300 buildings were damaged. From a rock the size of a 6-car garage, the family in Houston, whose house was struck by a fragment on March 21st, survived because the original rock was only a few feet across. If that rock had been 20 meters across, Cypress Station would no longer exist. If it had been 50 meters, the greater Houston area would be a cratered disaster zone. And that opens the most disturbing possibility of all: the warning window. If a Chelyabinsk-scale event were to trigger over a major US city tomorrow, driven by this new influx of high-declination debris, there would be no evacuation. You would not get an alert on your phone. You would have exactly 0 to 60 seconds of warning, the time between the flash of light in the sky and the arrival of the supersonic shockwave that turns every glass window in the city into lethal shrapnel. Which leads to the bigger question. The American Meteor Society looked at their data and publicly stated, "This shows a pattern that warrants serious investigation." Whether this reflects a genuine change in the near-Earth meteoroid environment, we cannot yet say definitively. NASA's Watch the Skies blog responded with, "It is not out of the ordinary. We're in peak fireball season." Why the disconnect? Dr. Nick Moskowitz, a planetary scientist at Lowell Observatory, phrased it carefully. He said, "I think we are looking at slightly elevated meteor activity, though still well within statistical expectations." Slightly elevated. A 3.9 sigma deviation. Double the high witness events. Record-shattering sonic booms. And it's called slightly elevated. Agencies downplay anomalous data for a reason. Public panic helps no one. Resource allocation is tied to congressional funding, which is tied to the 140-meter mandate. If NASA admits that the sporadic background of 10 to 50-meter objects is suddenly spiking, they are admitting to a threat they literally do not have the budget or the hardware to track. The AI reporting theory is their safety net. It's a plausible deniability metric. But behind closed doors, in the planetary defense community, the conversation is shifting. They are looking at the Vesta eucrite trajectories and wondering what else was dislodged from that orbital lane.
We are standing on the edge of a new understanding of our local space environment. The March 2026 fireball cluster is now etched into the astronomical record. The data is clean, the impact energy is verified. The sonic booms echo the undeniable truth. Our planet is flying through a thickened field of celestial debris, but the real question is what comes next.
We are entering Q2 2026. If this was just fireball season, the rates will drop. The skies will quiet down. The sonic booms will fade. But if the high-declination radiants continue to spit 7-ton rocks into our atmosphere, if the Anthelion source remains elevated, then we are no longer looking at an anomaly. We are looking at a new normal. Earth is a spaceship traveling at 67,000 miles per hour through a violent, dynamic universe. For decades, we have enjoyed a relatively clear path. That path is getting cluttered. When the Q2 data drops, the truth will be impossible to hide. The next time you see a flash of light in the daytime sky, or hear a rumble that shakes the foundations of your house, know that you are witnessing the absolute limit of human predictability. When the next major event breaks the atmosphere, and this channel will be here to break down the exact trajectories, the real threat level, and the data they try to bury on page 4 of a technical blog. Hit subscribe, keep your eyes on the skies, and stay ready.